The city was just beginning to stretch and yawn when Valeria Castellanos' day truly began. Lamplight still pooled on the cobbled streets outside Dolce Vita Bakery, her family's heart and soul. Inside, the air was already thick with the comforting scent of yeast, sugar, and warm chocolate. Valeria tied her apron, the familiar fabric, a second skin. She loved this quiet time before the morning rush, when the bakery felt like her own secret kingdom. The gentle hum of the ovens was a lullaby, a promise of delicious things to come. Her hands, dusted with flour, moved with practiced ease, shaping dough, piping cream, arranging pastries into tempting displays of art. This was her world, built on hard work and love. Her mama, Isabella, emerged from the back, her smile as warm as the freshly baked conchas. "Morning, mi amor," she said, her voice soft. Papa Mateo was already kneading a mountain of dough, his strong arms a testament to years of crafting bread. Abuela Rosa sat at a small table, meticulously arranging alfajores, her wise eyes twinkling. They moved around each other in a familiar dance, a symphony of clattering pans, soft Spanish chatter and shared laughter. Valeria felt a surge of warmth. This bakery wasn't just a business. It was their legacy, their joy, a sweet, sugary hug for the entire neighborhood. It was home in every sense of the word. The first rays of sun peeked through the shop window, painting stripes of gold across the floor. Valeria placed a tray of glistening palmiers in the display case. Each pastry held a memory, a story. The pan dulce reminded her of Sunday mornings with her grandparents. The churros, dusted with cinnamon sugar, were for celebrations, big or small. She imagined the people who would come in today, the tired office worker needing a morning boost, the children with faces pressed against the glass, the elderly couple sharing a sweet treat. She wasn't just selling pastries, she was selling moments of happiness, small comforts in a bustling city. Soon the bell above the door would start its cheerful jingle, announcing the first customers. Valeria took a deep breath, inhaling the sweet, yeasty air. She felt ready for the chatter, the orders, the familiar faces, ready for another day of pouring her heart into every croissant, every cupcake, every lovingly crafted cake. Her life wasn't glamorous, not by a long shot. It was filled with early mornings and tired feet, but it was real, it was hers. And in its own simple way, it was absolutely perfect, a sweet symphony played out in flour and sugar. Miles away, in a sprawling mansion overlooking the city, Leonardo de Luca's morning began very differently. Sunlight streamed through vast floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating a room that looked more like a museum exhibit than a teenage boy's bedroom. Everything was pristine, expensive, and utterly impersonal. A silent, uniformed housekeeper had already laid out his perfectly pressed school uniform. Breakfast, a solitary affair, would be served in a dining room vast enough to host a state dinner. There was no scent of baking bread here, only the faint, sterile smell of polish and old money. Leonardo often felt like another perfectly placed ornament in his own home. He stared out at the panoramic view of the city, a glittering tapestry below. It looked so vibrant, so alive from up here. Yet he felt completely disconnected from it all. His family name, De Luca, was synonymous with wealth and power, a name that opened every door but seemed to close off every chance at a normal life. He had everything a boy could supposedly want. Designer clothes, the latest gadgets, a chauffeur to take him anywhere, but what he truly craved was something money couldn't buy: anonymity, genuine friendship, a moment where he wasn't just Leonardo de Luca, the heir. His world was a gilded cage, beautiful on the outside but terribly lonely within. His schedule was meticulously managed, every hour accounted for, from private tutoring to polo lessons he didn't particularly enjoy. Interactions were often formal, transactional. Even his own father, Alejandro de Luca Sr., was a distant figure, more a business associate than a parent, his time consumed by expanding the De Luca empire. Leonardo longed for the easy camaraderie he sometimes glimpsed among other students, the casual hangouts, the silly inside jokes. He yearned for the warmth of a family like Valeria's, though he didn't know her name yet, or the sweet chaos of a place like her bakery. He just knew his own life felt hollow. He picked up his designer school bag, the leather cool beneath his fingers. Another day of navigating the whispers and stares, the assumptions and expectations. Sometimes he wished he could just disappear, shed the De Luca name like an uncomfortable coat, and walk amongst the city crowds unnoticed. He wanted to experience life unfiltered, not through the lens of privilege that always seemed to keep him at a distance. The luxury surrounding him felt less like a comfort and more like a beautifully crafted barrier, isolating him from the very world he desperately wanted to be a part of, a world that felt bustling and real just beyond his window. Northwood Academy's hallways buzzed with the usual Monday morning energy. Lockers slammed, trainers squeaked on polished floors, and chatter echoed off the high ceilings. Valeria Castellanos navigated the throng with a practiced ease, her mind already on her upcoming chemistry lesson. She wasn't one for the school's social hierarchy, preferring her small circle of genuine friends and the comfort of her books. She was focused, driven with dreams that extended far beyond the manicured lawns of Northwood. She carried her well-worn textbooks, a stark contrast to the designer bags many of her classmates flaunted, and she wouldn't have it any other way. Suddenly, a hush fell over a section of the corridor. Heads turned, whispers rippled through the crowd. Leonardo De Luca had arrived. He walked with an air of quiet reserve, his gaze often fixed on the floor as if trying to make himself smaller, yet his presence was undeniable, like a magnet drawing all attention. Girls giggled and preened, while boys cast envious or resentful glances. Valeria, however, merely spared him a cursory glance. To her, he was just another student, albeit one who seemed to attract an inordinate amount of fuss. She had more important things to think about than the school's resident millionaire. Her best friend, Sophia Rossi, however, was a different story. Sophia clutched Valeria's arm, her eyes wide and dreamy. "Oh my goodness, Val, it's him, Leonardo!" Sophia was a romantic at heart, always ready with the latest gossip and a sigh for every handsome boy who crossed her path. "Isn't he just breathtaking? So mysterious." Valeria rolled her eyes good-naturedly. "He's just a boy, so probably puts his trousers on one leg at a time, just like everyone else." Sophia sighed dramatically. "But he does it in trousers, Val, and with such tragic, brooding eyes. There's a story there, I can feel it." Valeria couldn't deny that Leonardo De Luca was conventionally attractive, with his dark, slightly tousled hair and those surprisingly intense eyes. But she found the aura of untouchable wealth and the constant fawning surrounding him rather off-putting. She preferred substance over style, genuine connection over fleeting crushes. As Leonardo passed them, his gaze flickered briefly towards Valeria. A fleeting, almost imperceptible moment of eye contact. Valeria felt a tiny, unexpected jolt, but quickly dismissed it. She had her studies, her family, her bakery. She didn't have time for mysterious, brooding millionaires, no matter how pretty their eyes were. Leonardo felt the familiar weight of eyes on him as he walked through the school corridors. He tried to ignore the whispers, the pointed fingers, the sudden silences that fell as he passed. He knew what they thought: arrogant, aloof, spoiled. If only they knew. His perceived aloofness was just shyness, a deep-seated discomfort with being the center of attention. He wasn't trying to be mysterious, he was just trying to navigate a world where his every move was scrutinized, where his surname often preceded him, creating a barrier before he even spoke a word. He longed to just be Leo, not Leonardo De Luca. He often tried to blend in, to act like any other student, but his efforts were usually misinterpreted or thwarted. A simple question in class might be seen as showing off his expensive education. An attempt to join a casual conversation would often make others awkward or overly eager to impress him. He found it exhausting, this constant performance of being someone he wasn't entirely sure he wanted to be. He saw the easy friendships around him, the shared laughter, the casual camaraderie, and felt a pang of loneliness. He had acquaintances, yes, but true friends? That was a luxury his wealth couldn't seem to buy. The teachers sometimes treated him differently too, either with undue deference or a subtle wariness, as if expecting trouble or a call from his influential father. He just wanted to learn, to be challenged, to be normal, but normal seemed to be an elusive concept for someone in his position. He often found himself retreating into his books, into the world of academia, where facts were facts and there were no hidden social agendas. It was a safe haven, a place where his intellect could shine without the baggage of his family name. He wished people could see past the money, past the mansion, past the chauffeur. He noticed Valeria Castellanos sometimes. She was different. She never seemed to fawn or stare. She had this quiet intensity about her, a focused energy that he admired from afar. She seemed completely unimpressed by who he was, or rather, who everyone he was. There was an authenticity about her that drew him in, even though they'd never spoken. He often wondered what it would be like to talk to someone like her, someone who might see him, just him, without the glittering, heavy veil of his family's fortune. He yearned for that genuine connection more than any material possession. One particularly stifling afternoon, the weight of expectations felt heavier than usual. Leonardo sat through his advanced economics class, the numbers just blurring before his eyes. Outside, the sun shone brightly and he could hear the distant sounds of students enjoying their free period, their laughter drifting through the open window. A sudden, reckless idea sparked in his mind. Escape. Just for an hour, just to feel anonymous, to breathe air that wasn't filtered through the prism of his wealth. He needed a break from the constant scrutiny, from his ever-present security detail that shadowed his every move, a constant reminder of his gilded cage. As the bell rang, signaling the end of the lesson, Leonardo made his move. Instead of heading towards his usual pickup spot where his driver, Thomas, would be waiting patiently, he veered off. He slipped through a side gate usually used by maintenance staff, his heart pounding with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. It was a foolish, impulsive act, completely out of character for him, but the desire for a moment of unscripted freedom, a taste of the ordinary, was just too strong to ignore. He pulled his cap lower, hoping to blend into the stream of students leaving the school grounds. He walked briskly, putting distance between himself and Northwood Academy. The further he got, the lighter he felt, a grin tugging at his lips. This was it. This was normal. Just a boy walking down the street. No chauffeur, no bodyguards, no expectant stares. He explored streets he'd only ever seen through the tinted windows of a luxury car. He saw neighborhood shops, children playing in a park, the everyday rhythm of city life that felt so foreign and yet so appealing. He bought a sugary drink from a corner shop, the transaction wonderfully, blessedly mundane. For a glorious hour, he was just Leo. But as the initial thrill wore off, a different feeling began to creep in. Disorientation. The streets started to look unfamiliar. He realized he had wandered much further than intended and had no real idea where he was. The city, which had seemed so inviting from a distance, now felt vast and slightly menacing. His phone, he remembered with a jolt, was still in his school bag, which was undoubtedly with Thomas. Panic began to bubble. His impulsive dash for freedom had led him to become thoroughly, completely lost. The anonymity he craved now felt like a vulnerability. Valeria Castellanos revved the engine of her beloved, slightly battered vintage Beetle. Clementine, as she affectionately called the car, coughed and sputtered before settling into a familiar rumble. Sophia was in the passenger seat, chattering excitedly about a new band she'd discovered. Valeria navigated the after-school traffic, her mind already drifting towards the evening shift at the bakery. She was looking forward to the comforting routine, the familiar smells, the satisfying feeling of creating something beautiful with her hands. School was important, a stepping stone, but the bakery was her sanctuary, her true passion. "Oh my goodness, Val, pull over!" Sophia suddenly exclaimed, pointing towards the pavement. "Is that... no way! It's Leonardo De Luca!" Valeria followed Sophia's gaze and, to her surprise, saw the very same Leonardo De Luca standing by the side of the road, looking utterly lost and rather flustered. He was without his usual entourage, his expensive blazer slightly rumpled, a distinct look of panic in his usually composed eyes. Valeria felt a pang of something akin to sympathy, quickly followed by her usual pragmatism. He looked like a fish out of water, a very expensive fish. "He looks like he's seen a ghost," Valeria murmured, slowing Clementine down. Sophia was practically bouncing in her seat. "This is our chance, Val. Our chance to talk to him. He clearly needs help. We to offer him a ride. It's fate!" Valeria hesitated. Offering a ride to the Leonardo De Luca? It felt a bit surreal. She wasn't one to seek out the popular crowd, and he was arguably the most popular, or at least most talked about, boy in school, but he did look genuinely distressed. And her mother had always taught her to help those in need, regardless of their bank balance. With a sigh that was part resignation, part amusement at Sophia's enthusiasm, Valeria pulled Clementine over to the curb. Sophia wound down her window with a flourish. "Leonardo, are you all right?" she called out, her voice a little too bright. Leonardo looked up, startled, his eyes widening slightly as he recognized them from school. He seemed torn between relief and embarrassment. Valeria leaned across Sophia. "Need a lift?" she asked, her tone casual, trying to diffuse the awkwardness she could already feel building. It was a simple question, but it felt like it hung in the air, charged with unspoken possibilities. Leonardo hesitated for a moment, clearly surprised by the offer. He glanced around as if expecting his security to magically appear. Then, with a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of his predicament, he nodded. Actually, yes, that would be very helpful. Thank you. He opened the back door of Clementine, his tall frame folding awkwardly into the compact space. The scent of old leather, mixed with the faint lingering aroma of vanilla from Valeria's bakery apron, filled the small car. It was a world away from the sanitized luxury of his usual chauffeured vehicles. The journey began in a rather stilted silence. Sophia, usually a chatterbox, seemed momentarily starstruck, occasionally stealing glances at Leonardo in the rearview mirror. Valeria focused on driving, acutely aware of the millionaire air sitting behind her. She could feel his gaze on the back of her head sometimes, and it made her inexplicably nervous. So, she began, trying to sound nonchalant, what brings the great Leonardo de Luca to this side of town, looking like he's lost his way to the palace? A small smile touched Leonardo's lips. Just exploring, he mumbled, his cheeks tinged pink. Got a bit carried away. Sophia, recovering her composure, piped up from the front. Exploring? How adventurous. Most people just assume you teleport everywhere on a cloud of money. Leonardo chuckled, a surprisingly warm and genuine sound. I wish. It would certainly make things easier. Valeria found herself smiling too. Maybe, just maybe, there was more to him than the aloof persona he projected at school. She asked him where he needed to go, and he gave an address in the wealthiest part of the city. A stark reminder of the different worlds they inhabited. The contrast between his destination and Clementine's cheerful shabbiness was almost comical. Despite the initial awkwardness, a tentative chemistry began to simmer in the cramped confines of the car. They exchanged small talk, discovering a shared dislike for their history teacher's monotone lectures and a surprising mutual appreciation for a niche indie band Sophia had mentioned. Leonardo seemed to relax slightly, his posture less rigid. Valeria found herself intrigued by the glimpses of the boy behind the billionaire facade. He was shy, yes, but also thoughtful and surprisingly down to earth when he wasn't being Leonardo de Luca. The air was charged not with tension, but with a curious nascent connection as Clementine rumbled on. As Clementine pulled up to the imposing gates of the De Luca estate, a sleek black car, previously unnoticed, glided silently to a halt a little way down the road. Leonardo, looking relieved and a little sheepish, thanked Valeria and Sophia profusely. I really appreciate this, he said, his gaze lingering on Valeria for a moment longer than necessary. I owe you one. As he stepped out, Valeria caught a glimpse of a stern-looking man in the black car, his eyes fixed on them. It was Alejandro de Luca, Leonardo's older, more formidable cousin, who managed much of the family's security and business affairs. His expression was unreadable, but unsettling. Valeria drove away, Sophia already dissecting every word and glance exchanged during the car ride, but Valeria felt a prickle of unease. Alejandro's stare had been intense, almost possessive. It was a stark reminder of the complex, powerful world Leonardo belonged to, a world far removed from her own life of flour, sugar, and family warmth. She tried to shake off the feeling, attributing it to an overactive imagination, but the image of Alejandro's watchful eyes lingered. There was a silent warning there, a suggestion that Leonardo was not as free as he might wish to be. Later that night, after a busy evening at the bakery, Valeria sat by her window looking out at the city lights. Her thoughts drifted from Leonardo's unexpected vulnerability to the strange intensity of his cousin. Then her mind turned to another mystery that had been captivating the city, the Midnight Veil. A masked hero appearing out of nowhere to help those in need, thwarting petty crimes, and then disappearing as silently as they came. The newspapers were full of speculation. Some called him a vigilante, others a guardian angel. Valeria, a romantic at heart, despite her practical nature, found herself secretly admiring this enigmatic figure. She wondered who could be brave enough, skilled enough to be the Midnight Veil. Someone with resources, perhaps, someone who knew the city's shadows well. Her gaze fell upon a small, overlooked detail from the afternoon, a faint, almost healed scratch on Leonardo's wrist, peeking out from his cuff as he'd reached for the car door. It was probably nothing, a polo injury perhaps, but a tiny, improbable thought sparked in her mind. Could the shy, reserved boy she'd given a lift to, the boy who seemed so trapped by his circumstances, be connected to the daring hero of the night? It seemed impossible, and yet... The city hummed its nightly song outside Valeria's window, a melody of distant sirens and hushed conversations. Her encounter with Leonardo de Luca replayed in her mind. He wasn't the arrogant Prince Charming Sophia imagined, nor the aloof snob many at school perceived him to be. He was complicated, shy, certainly, yearning for something more, definitely. But what exactly lay beneath that carefully constructed surface? Was his desire for normalcy genuine, or just a fleeting whim of a boy who had everything? And what was the deal with his cousin Alejandro, whose watchful presence felt like a shadow over Leonardo's newfound taste of freedom? Then there was the matter of the Midnight Veil. Valeria found herself increasingly intrigued by this mysterious protector. Who was he? Why did he do what he did? The city was full of people needing help, but this hero seemed to operate with a specific kind of quiet efficiency, almost as if he understood what it felt like to be overlooked or vulnerable. Was he someone ordinary, driven by an extraordinary sense of justice? Or was he perhaps someone extraordinary, trying to find a purpose beyond a life of privilege? The question swirled as elusive as the hero himself. Could there truly be a connection between the timid boy lost on a street corner and the bold figure leaping across rooftops? Valeria chided herself for the fanciful thought. It was the stuff of comic books, of wild dreams. Leonardo de Luca, a masked hero? It seemed utterly improbable. Yet that tiny scratch, the way he'd seemed so out of place, yet strangely observant. Small details, perhaps meaningless, but they tugged at her curiosity. Life, she was learning, was often more surprising than the stories she read. Perhaps the most unassuming people hid the most extraordinary secrets. The night air felt charged with unanswered questions. What did Alejandro de Luca truly want for Leonardo? Would Leonardo dare to step out of his gilded cage again? And who exactly was the Midnight Veil, the city's silent guardian, whose exploits filled Valeria with a strange sense of hope and admiration? One thing was certain. Her ordinary world had just collided with something far more complex and mysterious. Valeria had a feeling that this was only the beginning, the first chapter in a story that was yet to fully unfold, a story veiled in midnight shadows and unexpected sparks.